Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Amo from Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. From Russia's attacks in Europe to China's continued aggression in the Indo-Pacific, hybrid warfare poses a new and growing risk to the United States and our allies around the world. We cannot face this threat alone. We must work with our allies to successfully counter and deter these attacks. And we must continue our support for our ally Ukraine, which is at the literal front lines of these hybrid attacks. However, President Trump's national security strategy chooses a different path. He'd rather undo our alliances and embolden Russian aggression. We need peace in Ukraine and ensure that they have a central role in the resolution of this war. We must make it clear that aggression is unacceptable, whether from Russia, from China, or some other malign actor. Russia and China have increased their cooperation in using hybrid warfare methods. China is clearly watching Russia's use of them and how the U.S. and our allies stand up to these threats. A clear example of how Russia and China have been using similar hybrid warfare tactics are the attacks on our allies' critical undersea infrastructure, like undersea cables and pipelines. Undersea infrastructure, as you know, enables the flow of data and internet and provides the gas and electric needed for a country's day-to-day operations. And since 2022, Russia has been accused of damaging undersea cables and gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea and actively mapping undersea infrastructure for future sabotage. China has also been accused of sabotaging undersea cables around Taiwan using the hybrid warfare tactics they are seeing in Europe and around the world. Ms. Cooper, this question is for you. How does Russia and China's alleged sabotage of undersea infrastructure undermine European and transatlantic security? And what are the long-term risks of these operations, both in Europe and around the world?
Thank you, Congressman. So Russia is trying to probe potential weaknesses in the Western alliance and in the alliance's dependency on undersea infrastructure. And this relates to certainly telecommunications infrastructure, but also energy infrastructure. And Russia is testing us. In many of these areas, Russia is probing and testing to see how we'll respond and to see how we address our vulnerabilities. Now, with undersea cables, we have seen the Europeans, as part of NATO, surging support for Baltic Sentry operations to try to deter further manipulation of undersea infrastructure. That's one area where NATO is showing that it is responding. But we have to treat this as full spectrum, because undersea cables is one thing, but undersea cables coupled with cyber attacks is a much more complicated problem. So this should lead us to continue to work together with our NATO allies to both improve our resilience, but also to determine what our responses are. Because when we don't respond, Russia thinks it can just keep escalating.
Yeah, and you point to the importance of the NATO alliance and some of the work that they've done of late in the critical undersea infrastructure network to share information and best practices to counter developing threats from Russia and China in the Baltic Sea. Really essential work. Why, again, it's important that our national strategy is in alignment with what we know to be true, that we need these alliances and the technical capacities behind them to thrive. Ms. Cooper, what can the alliance and with NATO more broadly do to counter threats to this undersea infrastructure, both in this network, but how specifically can our country, then the United States, support this coordination and play a vital role in the security that we need to provide?
Thank you, Congressman. Well, as part of NATO efforts, we need to continue to support NATO in its vigilance in operations to deter these attacks. We also need to support resilience of our infrastructure, and this is infrastructure in Europe, but also transatlantic infrastructure, certainly, and that includes a big focus on cyber. There is a particular aspect of this undersea challenge that is unique to Russia's shadow fleet, because we've seen Russia's shadow shadow fleet vessels used in cable damage operations. So there are a host of policy initiatives that we can pursue in the United States to target Russia's shadow fleet. This is everything from undermining their flag, their foreign flags, their administrative support, and also enabling our intelligence to track these vessels where they operate.
Thank you.